His story is about a couple stranded on an alien planet just as the wife goes into labor. It all started with a travel deal that looked too good to be true. 2 weeks on Zelia or Voy, all-inclusive, cultural exchange optional, the ad had said, plastered on the side of a sleepy shuttle terminal in Nevada. Jake thought it sounded perfect. His wife, Megan, thought it sounded like a great story for their unborn kids someday. They were both wrong. The planet was beautiful, sure, in the way that Technicolor fever dreams could be beautiful. Towering trees that blinked, lakes that rearranged their shorelines depending on their mood, and a sky that seemed to change based on what song was playing on your travel pod speaker. Jake loved it. Megan, 8 months pregnant and starting to suspect her ankles might never return to their original shape, was less enchanted. "It's like vacationing inside a lava lamp," she muttered after day 3. Then came the shuttle delay. What was supposed to be a leisurely departure back to Earth was halted by something Jake summarized to his family over holocall as space traffic jam. A rogue moon is doing donuts around the departure orbit or something. The Zalians called it a gravitational resonance anomaly. Jake just called it very inconvenient. 2 months. They were stuck for 2 more months. "We'll make the best of it," Jake said cheerily, spooning something that looked like glowing oatmeal into his mouth. "Might be good for the baby. You know, exposure to other cultures." "You're always saying kids should grow up global." "I said bilingual," Megan growled, "not biplanetary." Despite the swelling and fatigue, she held it together. Until Zalian Tuesday, which, confusingly, fell on a day Earth would call Friday. She was browsing through local birthstone jewelry, not that the Zalians used stones, more like solidified time bubbles, when the first contraction hit. Hard. By the second one, she was on the ground, gasping. Jake was halfway through debating whether to get the quantum ripple earrings or the nebulous fusion beads when he turned around and dropped both. "Hospital," she barked. "Right. Yes. Hospital. Oh no! Where's my—" "Okay, it doesn't matter." He activated their emergency beacon, which summoned a Zalian medical skimmer that arrived with a whoosh and a strong scent of lavender and electricity. Jake ran alongside the hover gurney as it zoomed down crystalline corridors of the alien facility. "She needs ice chips, I think. I saw it in a movie," he yelled, completely panicked but trying very hard to help. The Zalian medical staff wasn't prepared. The surgeon, a lanky creature with 4 arms and glowing knee joints, skidded to a halt when he saw Megan groaning and clutching her abdomen. "It's rupturing," he shrieked. "No! Another one, this one wearing what could only be described as a transparent bowl filled with floating herbs, shouted. "It's a splitting event. This is reproduction." "I don't want to explode," Megan hissed through her teeth. "No one's exploding," Jake promised, looking directly into the eyes or possibly air vents of the nearest nurse. A third staff member, whose role was unclear but who had excellent posture, was weeping silently in the corner. "Why is it yelling?" he whispered to no one. "Because I'm in labor," Megan growled. "Someone get me a chair or a bed or anything not made of light and confusion." They finally managed to stabilize her on what passed for a delivery table, a floating pad that kept adjusting its angle depending on her blood pressure. The lead Zalian doctor hovered nearby, checking his scanner with a trembling pseudopod. What emerges? A larva? A podling? Will it be preformed or must we mold it? Jake, beside himself, was holding her hand and trying to remember what they'd learned in birthing class. Okay, breathe. In through the nose, out through the... Wait, do humans still do that? Never mind, just keep breathing. Megan did not respond well to being told to breathe. She did, however, scream loud enough that the translator spheres all clicked off simultaneously. One of the Zalians ran in with a cone-shaped object, shouting, "Apply the noise funnel!" But it was too late. With a sharp cry, Megan bore down. There was a rush of movement, a splash that made one nurse gag, and then the baby cried. The room went dead silent. One alien fainted backward into a wall, making a musical ping sound. Another turned in a full circle and began recording notes into its chest cavity. "It's detached," someone shouted, Biological detachment confirmed. The nurse with the salad bowl hat clapped in confusion. Success! She survived the separation! Megan panted, eyes glazed. Jake was already crying as he held up the slick, wailing infant. "We did it!" he grinned. There's another one," Megan croaked. The room froze again. "Another what?" the lead Zalian doctor asked slowly. Jake's grin faltered. "Wait, another what?" And then, with zero ceremony and the most exhausted growl known to mankind, Megan pushed again. Out slid baby number 2. Shrieking from every corner. One Zalian doctor dropped his scanner and backed toward the emergency exit. "It replicates. It's a self-cloning mammal." "This is not cloning," Megan snapped. "It's twins. Fraternal. Look it up." Jake held one baby while the other was being swaddled by a nurse who looked like it had 5 elbows. The babies cried in harmony. 3 aliens fled behind a diagnostic tank, covering their sensory flaps. But the chaos wasn't over. "They're still connected," a doctor whispered, pointing at the umbilical cords like he'd found forbidden magic. "Is this some kind of backup system?" "No," Megan said, nearly sobbing. "They're umbilical cords. It's normal." Jake nodded helpfully. Yeah, totally normal. We watched a video once, sort of. There was animation." "I don't feel good," muttered the crying nurse. "I need to feed them," Megan said. She was sweaty, pale, and shaking but alert. This caused an outright meltdown. One alien tried scanning the babies for nutritional emission glands. Another presented a steaming bowl of jelly and a spoon. A third suggested transdermal fluid exchange and prepared a sterile sponge. "No, just give them to me," Megan shouted, arms out. Jake, still clutching one of the twins like a slippery football, helped hand them over. Megan adjusted herself, brought one baby to her chest and latched him on. Silence fell. Not shocked silence, more like profound existential bewilderment. Dozens of alien eyes widened. A scribe in the corner was scribbling so fast its pen caught fire. One medical assistant fainted. Another asked, "Is she excreting sustenance?" Jake sat down on the floor, back against the glowing birthing wall, eyes still glassy. "This is going to make one heck of a baby book entry." Megan just closed her eyes and let out a long, trembling breath. "Tell Earth," whispered one alien. "Tell them the humans are real." The medbay was still vibrating with quiet horror as Megan leaned back, eyes fluttering closed, a baby at each breast and her whole body trembling with effort. Her hair was plastered to her face, her skin glistening with sweat, and every muscle in her torso throbbed in protest. But she was calm. In a way only someone who had just physically ejected 2 entire humans from their body could be. Jake was still sitting on the glowing floor, knees pulled up to his chest, his free hand fidgeting with a towel. The baby he held earlier had been tucked into Megan's arms, but he hadn't moved from the spot. Occasionally he'd glance at the nearest Zalian with wide eyes, as if asking, "So, was that normal?" The Zalians hadn't come any closer. A semicircle of glowing, trembling medics stood behind the nearest diagnostic pillar, their bioluminescent scrubs flickering like confused fireflies. One of them, Dr. Vaith, had been repeating the phrase "they feed from her" into a recorder for about 10 minutes now. "Why are they crying so much?" asked the tall, gelatinous assistant, trying to look brave while hiding behind a privacy panel. Jake finally spoke. "Well, they're babies. That's kind of what they do." "They cry to survive?" asked Dr. Vaith, horrified. "They cry for everything," Jake corrected, gesturing weakly. "Food, air, noise, temperature, gravity, bright colors, shadows. If it exists, they might cry about it." Megan gave a weary chuckle, which turned into a pained hiss. "And if I don't lie down soon, I might cry too." Another medic sprinted floated quickly to prepare what looked like a recovery unit. It was shaped like an oversized seashell and hummed as it unfolded into a padded lounge. Jake stood, slowly, knees cracking, and walked toward Megan, his hand reaching to support her elbow. "Wait," Dr. Vaith said, stepping forward with exaggerated caution. Is Is it safe to touch her now? She hasn't released spores or anything. I'm not a mushroom, Megan said through clenched teeth. He's just tired, Jake added, and probably needs a real bed, with actual gravity. It took another full 10 minutes to move Megan into the recovery unit. The Zelians debated whether the babies could be placed on the same biomesh support or if they needed their own containment domes. Megan ended the debate by threatening to feed them both at once again. Eventually, they gave up and just followed the humans' lead. One of the twins let out a sharp wail when moved, which sent another assistant stumbling into a wall. Why does it make that noise? It's like an alarm system. I think this one is mad about being taken off the buffet, Jake joked, already adjusting the wraparound blanket with practiced chaos. Dr. Vaith had finally gathered enough courage to step within a few feet of Megan. He observed carefully, then hesitantly asked, "So, you said this is twins. Is that common?" Jake glanced at Megan, who closed her eyes and exhaled heavily. "It's not rare, happens sometimes. Usually not a surprise, though." Dr. Vaith turned to the others. "We were unprepared for a bifurcated reproductive ejection event. This changes the baseline human birthing schema entirely." "It does not," Megan muttered. "This is just kind of a human thing. Rare, but not unheard of." The Zalians didn't seem convinced. A few were already updating visual diagrams on their med tablets. One included a terrifyingly inaccurate drawing of a human body, with dotted lines and multiple detachable sections. "I think you're scaring them more by being calm," Jake whispered to her. "I don't have energy to be anything else," she replied. That night, though, night was a flexible concept on Zelia for Megan, and the twins were moved to a private recovery chamber. It had been specially converted to accommodate human recovery type A, uncontrolled multiplication variant. It was mostly quiet, save for the occasional hiccuping sob from the twins, and the occasional alien muttering outside the sound-dampening field. Jake lay on the narrow companion couch, legs dangling off the edge, watching Megan sleep between feeds. Her body was limp, hair a tangled mess, and her face pale but peaceful. Even exhausted and stitched up because, of course, there had been tearing, she looked more powerful than he'd ever seen her. He was still processing the fact that he was a dad now. Twice. His thoughts were interrupted when a Zalian entered the chamber, holding a glowing scroll. Jake sat up. "Hey, she's resting." Yes, the medic said in a whisper. "I come with official documentation. Birth record, also observation log." The scroll unfurled mid-air, displaying a projection of text, diagrams, and what looked suspiciously like a pie chart labeled Decibel Levels of Human Reproductive Event. Jake blinked at it. "Is that a sound graph of Megan screaming?" "Correct." It was unprecedented. He looked at the medic. "You're not putting this in some kind of weird exhibit, are you?" "We have ethics now," the Zalian replied, too quickly. Jake stood, gently stepped past the sleeping cocoon, and pointed at a section titled Emergency Biological Detachment Twins Variant. "Okay, stop calling it that. It's childbirth, not detachment." Zalian tapped a stylus on its head. "We're updating terminology, but we are struggling to catalog several aspects. The duplication, the noise, the feeding mechanism." Jake rubbed his face. "Listen, you want to understand us? Fine. Start by accepting that it's messy, loud, and painful, and still somehow worth it." The Zalian scribbled furiously. The next few days were spent mostly in a haze of feedings, sleeplessness, and Megan attempting to explain basic neonatal care to creatures who thought babies should be kept in nutrient vapor. These aliens brought endless gadgets to assist. One machine tried to interpret baby cries and instead declared mild weather pattern every time they fussed. Another offered to analyze Megan's nutrient secretion and got swatted with a pillow. She had to insist repeatedly that she did not need a milk filtration implant. By day 5, Jake had stopped jumping every time the twins cried and had learned how to change diapers with only mild panicking. He also made a deal with the medical staff, no more scanning their babies during nap time. On day 7, Dr. Vaith returned with a proposal. We wish to observe a full human recovery cycle. Daily updates, behavior monitoring, nutrition logs, perhaps even emotional reactions. Jake blinked. You want to study her while she's recovering from labor? Purely observational. No poking, no scanning, no trying to enhance her hormonal pathways. Strictly hands-off, unless permission is granted. Jake glanced over at Megan, who had one baby asleep on her chest and the other hiccuping gently beside her. He sighed. Fine, but you clean up the diapers. All of them. Dr. Vaith looked intrigued. They excrete this frequently? Jake gave him a look that could wilt flowers. That night, as Megan finally got 2 uninterrupted hours of sleep, Jake sat by the crib staring at his kids. The Zelians had provided a hovering cradle that glowed softly and hummed lullabies in 3 languages. He reached in, brushed a finger across the tiny fist of one twin, then whispered, We're going to tell you this story someday, and you're never going to believe it. Behind him, a Zelian whispered to another, I think, I admire them. No, you're just sleep-deprived, the other replied. But they both kept watching. Megan's 6th postpartum day began with a headache, 2 crying infants, and an alien trying to install an emotional fluctuation monitor into her mattress. Get out, she said, eyes still closed. But it only hums softly and tracks your out. The Zelian medical assistant slowly floated backward out of the chamber, whispering apologies and something about the sacred boundaries of maternal den nesting. Megan groaned and sat up carefully, feeling every stitch and ache like a physical memory. Recovery wasn't glamorous. She was sore, her core felt like mush, and walking to the bathroom was still an Olympic event. The staff had offered her hover assistance chairs, but they all made a high-pitched whistle that freaked out the twins, so she refused. Jake appeared, hair sticking up on one side, holding 2 mugs of something close enough to coffee that they'd accepted it as the local substitute. Almond's probably decaf, he said, handing her the darker one. Or neurocalming. Either way, it's warm. She accepted it gratefully, leaning back against the angled support pillows the Zelians had spent hours perfecting. The babies were sleeping, temporarily. Megan could actually hear herself think. So, any updates? She asked. Jake nodded. Vaith says your chart is now required study material for interspecies reproductive emergency response. He also mentioned you're unofficially classified as a Tier 3 biological anomaly. She sipped the mystery brew. I don't know what that means. Neither do they. Just then, a soft chime sounded at the door. Megan tensed. No more scans. Jake opened the door halfway and peeked out. It's a diplomat. Says it's important and not medically invasive. Megan blinked. That's a new one. In floated a Zelian with polished exoskin and a woven sash that glimmered with political insignias. It carried a small, ornate box and wore what appeared to be ceremonial eyewear, shaped like an old-fashioned earth snowflake. Greetings, it said, its voice deeper and smoother than the others. I am Representative Hesha of the Council of Interstellar Civility. We wish to apologize for the disruptions. Megan stared, then looked down at her swollen ankles and the stain on her gown from last night's milk leak. Bit late for that. Jake cleared his throat. We're managing, but thanks. Hesha nodded solemnly. Your birthing event caused panic across 3 provinces. Several emergency protocols were triggered. One Border Patrol reported sustained auditory distress, suggesting planetary instability. Megan chuckled once, winced, and rubbed her side. Glad to be of service. We bring a gesture of peace, Hesha said, and opened the ornate box with reverence. Inside was a small medallion shaped like an egg, suspended in clear stasis gel. This is the symbol of controlled genesis, Hesha explained. Traditionally awarded to species who successfully demonstrate non-catastrophic self-replication. Jake blinked. Wait, you're giving her a medal for giving birth? She earned it, Megan said dryly. After the awkward ceremony, which included a small holographic display showing stylized humans gently dividing like amoebas, the diplomat floated off with polite murmurs and a strong suggestion that Megan might be interviewed by the Zelia in Scientific Digest. That afternoon, Megan insisted on standing up to walk around. "I need to move, I'm not a sack of pudding," she said, gripping Jake's arm as she carefully stood. The Exalians observed from a respectful distance this time. Dr. Vaith, now shadowing them like a very nervous ghost, noted, "Human recovery appears self-directed despite structural trauma and fluid loss. How is this tolerated?" Jake, supporting her under the elbow, said, "Because she's a badass." Megan muttered, "Because I have to be." The twins were temporarily housed in a climate-stable hover bassinet, which Jake nudged gently along. They'd named the babies earlier that morning after deciding that they couldn't keep referring to them as Twin A and the one who farts. Nathan and Ellie, the Zalians took notes on that too. Apparently, naming infants was still a relatively new concept for several species. One researcher asked if names influenced the digestive system. The couple wandered slowly through the upper corridor gardens, which had been cleared for peaceful human locomotion. The bioluminescent trees dimmed their light, and the floor adjusted its gravity pads to keep Megan from straining her back. A group of Zalian children passed by, led by a teacher who whispered, "Quietly now, the miracle givers are here." Jake laughed. "You're a celebrity. I just pushed 2 people out of me while screaming. That doesn't make me a miracle." To them it does. A few days later, the hospital staged a seminar titled Understanding Mammalian Multiplication, the Human Example. Megan and Jake were not invited to speak, but their birthing footage, tragically, had made the educational rounds. Megan only found out because a nurse mentioned seeing the moment of the second emergence in an ethics class. Jake was more amused. "You're literally a case study." "I was screaming and leaking bodily fluids," she replied flatly, glad to be academic. Eventually, the shuttle departure date approached. The gravitational traffic had cleared mostly. The rogue moon had been nudged back into its orbit by a fleet of annoyed Zalian engineers. Megan was medically cleared to travel. Jake packed everything twice. The babies had 2 sets of everything alien, provided swaddles, earth onesies, and temperature-neutral sleep pods. Dr. Vaith visited one last time. "I apologize for our initial panic," he said slowly. "Your resilience was unexpected, humbling even." Megan shook his hand. "It's okay. To be fair, I wasn't exactly graceful." "You were terrifying," Vaith said, nodding sincerely, "but also inspiring." He handed them a small hollow drive. "We compiled all relevant data, also messages." Megan raised an eyebrow. "Many Zalians wrote notes. To your offspring." They opened one at random. It read, "May your breath be steady, your cries be purposeful, and your duplications rare." Megan snorted. "We're definitely hanging that above the crib." As they boarded the shuttle, a small crowd had gathered. Medical staff, observers, even Hesha. Jake turned and waved. "Thanks for not dissecting us." There was scattered clapping. One alien held up a sign with poorly translated Earth script. "Human mother equals brave cedar." Jake looked at Megan. "Do we tell them that sounds like a gardening term?" Megan shook her head. "Let's let that one go." They settled into their seats. The babies were asleep in their carriers, wrapped in blankets infused with Zalian calming pheromones. Megan adjusted her support pillow, exhaled, and leaned against Jake. "Can't believe that was our vacation," she whispered. He grinned. "Best worst trip ever." The shuttle took off, leaving Zelia 84 behind. Back in the medbay, Dr. Vaith carefully closed the recovery chamber and whispered, "Next time we'll be ready." Then paused. Maybe. The return to Earth was, by contrast, refreshingly uneventful. No rogue moons, no plasma turbulence, no confused interspecies reproductive committees. Just a quiet, steady descent toward a mid-level civilian landing bay in Colorado, where Jake's sister was waiting, bouncing excitedly on her toes. As the hatch opened, she let out a squeal and rushed forward. Let me see them, let me. Oh my God, they're tiny. Megan smiled, holding Ellie in one arm while Nathan snoozed in a carrier on Jake's chest. They're not that tiny, Megan said. They just look small next to interstellar chaos. Jake looked around. Are there reporters, biologists, a roaming band of curious space tourists? His sister blinked. No. Should there be? Megan shook her head, relieved. Never mind. It's nice to be back somewhere where babies aren't considered life-altering anomalies. I mean, they are life-altering anomalies, Jake's sister said, peeking into the carrier. But, in the normal human way. They were escorted through customs with minimal fuss. The twins slept through the entire process. Megan, stitched and sore and still moving like someone recovering from a significant internal reshuffling, walked carefully but proudly. Jake carried both their bags and didn't complain once. The debrief from Interplanetary Travel Authority took longer. They were asked a series of procedural questions. Did you consume any unauthorized biological matter? No, just some jelly that made Jake hear music colors. Were you exposed to any bodily fluids from non-Earth species? Megan just looked at the nurse and deadpanned. Do tears of confusion count? The final question came from a young researcher who looked like he had way too much caffeine and access to alien forums. Can I ask, how exactly did you know it was twins? Megan stared at him. An ultrasound at 6 months? He nodded, scribbling notes furiously. Back at home, everything felt smaller, softer. The air didn't smell like charged ions or sterile drift compounds. The gravity was just right. The beds didn't hover, and the bathroom door actually closed. Jake collapsed into their couch like he'd trained for this moment. Megan stood silently in the doorway for a moment, eyes welling. Oh, the twins didn't care. They slept, they cried, they pooped in synchronized intervals like they were in a union. Megan fed them, groaning when her back flared up, and Jake handled the burping and nighttime changes like a man running on gratitude and 4 hours of broken sleep. 2 weeks passed. Recovery was slow. Megan saw her obstetrician twice. You're healing well, the doctor said, considering the travel, the environment, and, the whole giving birth on an alien planet thing. Megan raised an eyebrow. You've heard? The doctor showed her a brief clip on her tablet. Megan's scream, one particular high-pitched contraction yell, had made it into a viral compilation of top 10 interstellar moments of 2242. Number 4, the human who multiplied. They didn't even spell my name right, Megan grumbled. Back home, Jake was juggling a feeding bottle and a holocall from someone in the Intergalactic Cultural Council. They want to create an educational packet, he said, half laughing, about human gestation, using us as the model experience. Megan walked in, cradling Ellie. Model? You passed out during the second delivery. Jake grinned, which makes it authentic. Life slowly resumed its rhythm. Megan's stitches dissolved and she started doing short walks again, one twin strapped to her front, the other in a stroller. Neighbors gushed. Friends visited. Someone brought a cake shaped like a moon and said, "Welcome back to gravity." One evening, after the babies were finally down, Megan settled into the couch beside Jake. There was a soft ping from his data pad, another message from Zelia. He opened it and laughed. It's from Vaeth. They opened a new ward, Adaptive Reproductive Response Training. It's got a whole mural of you on the wall. You're mid-contraction. It's quite dramatic. Megan groaned and buried her face in her hands. Please tell me they didn't include the sound. Jake hesitated. They did. She sighed. I'm going to be alien famous forever, aren't I? Jake leaned over, kissed the top of her head, and smiled. You terrified an entire medical species, taught them about breastfeeding, and introduced twins to a planet that thought humans split like bacteria. If anyone deserves it, it's you. There was a quiet moment. Then Megan said, I still wish someone had given me the crash course before all this. You handled it like a champ. I handled it like a sleep-deprived mammal with a schedule to keep. Jake laughed and reached for one of the baby monitors. At least they stopped crying for no reason. A wail erupted from the other room. Jake didn't move. I jinxed it, didn't I? You do realize, Megan said as she hauled herself up, that the next time we travel off planet, I'm getting full reproductive clearance from 3 governing bodies and a therapist. Jake followed, grabbing a warm bottle. Deal. But maybe just a short vacation next time? Somewhere boring, like Mars. Mars has sandstorms and sunburns, Megan said. Ula? Too touristy. Jake paused. Okay, hear me out. What about Earth? She turned, looked at him, and for the first time in weeks, laughed. Now that is the best idea you've ever had. Later that night, as the twins dozed and the soft hum of the monitor filled the room, Jake typed out one last message to Zelia IV. Thanks for not giving up on us, even when we were loud, confusing, and kind of terrifying. Turns out, that's just parenting. Sincerely, Earth's accidental ambassadors of biological chaos. He clicked send and closed the device. Megan stirred beside him. What was that? Jake smiled. Just letting them know we're okay. She reached over, took his hand and whispered, We really are, aren't we? He nodded. And next time, we'll bring diapers. Lots of diapers. From the baby crib came a hiccup. Then a tiny fart. Megan didn't even flinch. And for the first time in a long time, things felt just right.